what is really happening in the Santa Cruz Valley and how it affects you. And we are back with Chris Ingram with Infinity Wealth Management, Don Getling, Gino Fronti, and we're touching base on what's happening in this crazy market that we're seeing, hearing, watching every single day. And Chris, thank you for being here to help us guide us through some items. We're going to touch back on where our credit rating really is, like I mentioned, but I also want to touch on what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing based on your vast experience, because you are an expert, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.
So we were talking a little bit about the AAA rating. I don't want to spend too much more time on that, but as we mentioned last week on the show, it's really important to know where we are relative to the rest of the world, right? Everything's relative, everything's perspective, and the reality is, the perspective is that we're still an extremely safe investment, and that the few other people that are joining us in this, that were on the same tier of AAA, you're talking about Germany, France, the UK, Canada. None of them by any means are the type of economy that we are. And
you can combine all three of them together, UK, Canada, and UK, Canada, and Australia together, and they're only a $5 trillion economy versus U.S. economy, which is close to $15 trillion.
Yeah, and there's also the other thing is, Canada's never going to be a world superpower. At least I don't believe they are.
Hey, and we got Canadians listening. Easy there. They kicked our butt at the Olympics.
Yeah, that's true. So, reality is the world superpowers right now, you're looking at the United States and China, and then you're looking at Europe probably as a whole rather than as the individual countries. And if you do look at Europe as the individual countries, you see that the individual countries are just failing miserably. And at some point, that's going to affect Europe as a whole, and they're no longer going to build that appearance that it seemed like they were trying to build under the euro of being a large, united front. I think that's falling apart right under the feet.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you think, Chris, that's going to affect us here, and will that have an impact, and is that part of what we're seeing today?
Again, it's very difficult to say. At the end of the day, it continues to prop up the United States as the superpower. I mean, obviously you've got China that's close behind, but when you're looking at it from this AAA rating perspective, and where are people going to invest their capital, where are other countries going to invest their capital, it still brings the United States back to the top of the heap as the safest place to put your investable dollars. And so you get countries like China that have already own a fair amount of our treasuries. Why would they stop putting money here in the United States and go to one of these other countries that you've already mentioned and start investing in their current or their debt versus the United States debt, just based on the change in our rating? It's probably not going to happen. You're going to see China continue to add money to U.S. Treasuries, and you're going to continue to see demand be fairly strong for U.S. Treasuries going forward.
Yeah. Now, the only thing I'll mention, and I haven't heard this in the media yet, is that as it becomes cheaper for the United States to borrow money, which is what these treasuries are we ever going to stop spending if it continuously becomes cheaper and cheaper for us to borrow? I mean, if people are going to let you borrow at 0, right, at 2%, right, that's where we're at now, 2.25. So if we can borrow money from the rest of the world at 2 or 2.25%, why would we ever stop borrowing?
We have to. I mean, that's a political issue, and they need to solve that in Washington D.C. and that's a major topic. President mentioned it today. They need to address that, and it needs to be a change going forward. Even though there's cheap money out there, we need to get our house in order here in the United States, and I think they'll eventually do that.
I think that's what this credit downgrade did serve for. I think it's a nice wake-up call, and definitely a poke in the side of Congress to say, get your act together. Everything's cool now, but get your act together, because it might not be cool going forward if you guys don't fix this.
Right. Well, and they put us on a negative outlook, too. So they've already said, we're dropping you to AA+, but this could go further if you guys don't get your house in order soon. So, again, somebody kind of pushing us down the right path, which probably is not a bad thing.
Well, we talk about that on our show. I mean, with even our clients and with you out there about getting, the big goal right now, the change in the philosophy for Americans is getting our house in order. And it's no different from our government. I mean, they have to get their house in order, as we all do, and we're all working hard to do that. And luckily, we're going to be forced to at some point, like Chris said. I mean, that's a valid point, that we have to get our house in order and stop this spending at some point, or we are going to run into even more troubles down the road. Wait, we just saw some issues with our debt limit just recently.
Oh, was that recently too? That
I
seems
don't
like
know. that was like 4 years ago.
That was a long time ago.
So speaking of getting our house in order, let's speak about our house. So, people are worried. People are concerned. You're getting calls. I'm sure your phone's ringing off the hook. Like you said, you haven't slept. What are people afraid of, and what do they need to look out for? What mistakes are they making? What things should and shouldn't they do? Definitely, number one thing people should not do, Chris.
Panic. I think that that's what's happening right now. And you look at the volatility in the market. Other than people like to blame the machines, the computers, computer trading, high frequency trading for a lot of the volatility. Other than that, it's panic. It's people that have gone through 2008. They've gone through 2000 to 2002, and they've decided, I'm never going to go through that again. So they're unloading portfolios, they're panicking, they're pulling money out, they're making a very knee-jerk reaction at this point.
And that's possibly the worst thing they could do, right?
Possibly, yeah. In most cases, there's probably a few very small cases where it might be the right thing to lighten up or reduce exposure to the markets at this point. But in most cases, it's probably the wrong thing to do.
And see, I love getting good advice from Chris Ingram right here with Infinity Wealth Management, helping us out and giving you good advice what you should and shouldn't be doing, because we all should be talking to experts. And right now, as you see the volatility, if you're not an expert or don't have a clue how this could affect you, you could lose your entire portfolio. You can lose tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands for some.
Definitely. I just talked to some people that sold out in 2008. And the market rebounded in 2009, and they sat on cash through 2009. Those people are feeling pain like no other investor. The investors that went through 2008, they recovered through 2009, 2010. They got their money back eventually. The people that sold out in 2008 are still trying to figure out where did that money go, because it's not in their investment accounts. So, those who fail to learn the lessons of history are condemned to repeat them. You got to really focus
Love that
on.
statement.
You got to focus on what happened before, learn lessons, and learn how to move forward. And the big thing I told people that I spoke with is, when you feel that panic coming on, go for a jog, go to the gym. Take a deep breath, relax, and then come back when you're calm and start reassessing your situation and figure out where to move forward.
And call Chris Ingram.
I like that too.
Yeah, and if you want to get in contact with Chris, because he's an expert and it's one we totally stand behind, you can call us at 855-DG-RADIO. It's 855-DG-RADIO. We'll make sure you get in contact with someone who will make you feel more comfortable about what you should and shouldn't be doing, because Chris is an expert, and you need an expert during these times.
Yeah, not only that, but he actually said go for a walk, go for a jog. He's making you burn calories too.
Yeah.
See, that's why he looks like he's in good shape. He must take care of himself. Or he doesn't have time to eat, one of the two.
Yeah, definitely. Well, no sleep probably helps burn calories.
No
too.
sleep, lots of caffeine, and no food. It pretty much is the
diet of
key.
champions, huh?
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
Well, I like how you mentioned reviewing your situation. I would imagine that's something that you have to take a breath, like you mentioned, and really review where you're at and where your goals are, because if they're looking short term, that's not going to help them make a educated decision, or maybe the right decision, right?
Correct. I had a client call me and he said, my son's going to college next year. What should we do in this situation? So there are situations where you get into and you say, well, the outlook over the next 12 months is pretty foggy right now, so maybe we should scale that back, move to a more cash fixed income position, try to protect the asset, and know that it's going to be there when he needs to go to college. On the flip side, I had another client call me that I think he's about 24 years old, and he said he wanted to cash out his portfolio, and that's exactly the opposite of what we want to do. The first question I asked him is, how long do you plan on being invested? His comment was 30 plus years, and when your time horizon is 30 plus years, the last thing you want to do is use these types of situations to pull money out and move to a cash position in your portfolio. You're probably the opposite. Let's start doubling down. Let's throw some more money. Let's increase your contributions. If you're contributing to a 401k, let's take it from 8% to up to 10% of your paycheck. Try and take advantage of the pullback, but definitely don't cash out if your time horizon is long term. So it goes back to that. Assess the situation. Who are you? What is your time horizon? What is your age? And what is right for you? Because what's right for you might not be right for another.
Yeah, and what's really important about this and the lesson to be learned there is you have to have financial professionals like Chris in your life that you can reach out to when you do feel panicked, when you don't know what you're doing. And you have to reach out and share your goals, and goals are constantly changing. And so share your goals, make the call, talk about it, and make sure that you're positioned and in line with your financial advisor. You want to make sure that your financial advisor knows what your goals are. Otherwise, they can't do the right thing for you. And sometimes I think that's where the disconnect happens and people get hurt.